My name is Haley Carter. I'm 29, and I never expected my own parents to accuse me of lying in court just to protect my brother. If you've ever felt overlooked or betrayed by your own family, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Like this video and subscribe for more stories like this. It started with a subpoena, a single sheet of paper that shattered any illusion I had left about how my family viewed me. I hadn't spoken to my brother Jason in nearly 2 years. Ever since that night I called the police, he was drunk, loud, and cruel. And that time, he'd gone too far, screaming at Mom, smashing a family photo, and grabbing Dad by the collar when he tried to intervene. I was the one who stepped between them. I was the one who dialed 911. But when the cops came, Jason had vanished, and the only person they questioned was me. "You're always so dramatic," Mom had hissed, as if I had broken the vase. "You just like the attention," Jason texted the next day before blocking me. Now, 2 years later, he was facing charges, real charges, with evidence, witness statements, and a string of incidents too consistent to ignore, and I was called to testify. I didn't expect support, but I didn't expect a betrayal either. Not like this. The day before the trial, Mom called. Her voice was soft, sweet even, like she used to sound when I scraped my knees or couldn't sleep during thunderstorms. "I know you think you're doing the right thing, honey," she said, "but think of what this will do to Jason's future. What about what he's already done?" There was silence. Then, "You always take things too far. You always have." That's when I knew. They weren't going to back me. They were going to stand beside him. And I, his sister, their daughter, was just the one trying to tear the family apart. I cried that night, not because I doubted what I'd seen, not because I felt guilty, but because I realized I'd never truly been on equal ground with Jason. Not when he stole my bike and blamed it on a neighbor kid, not when he totaled Dad's car and I was the one grounded for being irresponsible, and not now. They were willing to lie under oath for him, and they were willing to paint me as the unhinged one. Again, I thought about backing out, about just disappearing. But something inside me shifted. A quiet, steady voice that said, "No more." I wasn't the dramatic one. I was just the only one who ever told the truth. And now, the truth was about to be heard, loud and clear, in a courtroom full of strangers. They thought I'd falter under pressure. They thought I'd break. But I wasn't a kid anymore. I was a woman with nothing left to lose, and a sworn statement that could tip the scales. I held that knowledge close as I walked into the courthouse. And I made a promise to myself. Whatever they said on that stand, I wouldn't flinch. Because this time, the world would see what I'd always known. And the judge was about to make sure of it. I wish I could say the trial was the first time my family dismissed me, but it wasn't. Their pattern of favoritism went back years, starting long before the police report, before the broken glass, before the lies that landed me in that courtroom. It started when we were kids. Jason was the loud one, the golden boy, the spirited child. I was quiet, curious, careful. When Jason broke a lamp, it was, "He's just high energy." When I spilled juice on the rug, it was, "Why can't you be more responsible?" He got trophies for showing up to soccer practice. I got lectures for reading too much and not helping around the house. I remember my 8th birthday. I'd asked for a puzzle set. Jason got a bike. We all watched as he rode in circles in the driveway, while I sat inside, unwrapping tissue paper and pretending not to notice that everyone had forgotten the candles. That was the first time I felt it, the quiet, sinking feeling that maybe I didn't matter the same way. As we got older, Jason's energy turned reckless. He skipped classes, blew allowance money, and still got praised for being creative. I made honor roll. No one came to the awards ceremony. When I got into college, on scholarship, they told me I should consider staying home. "Jason's not doing great," Mom said. "He could use the support." So I deferred my dream and took a job at a local diner, to be near him, to help the family. Jason, meanwhile, moved into an apartment our parents paid for. He crashed 2 jobs, racked up credit card debt, and showed up on our doorstep whenever things got too hard. I was the one who helped him write a resume. I was the one who quietly transferred $300 into his account when his rent was late, money I was saving for tuition. I still have the text he sent that night. "You're too emotional, Haley. You always were." That one stung, because all I'd ever wanted was to be enough, to be seen, not as the dramatic one, not as the overreactor, just as their daughter. But they never saw me. Not really. They saw Jason's spark. They saw his mistakes as potential, and mine as liabilities. They didn't know about the panic attacks, or the therapy sessions I paid for myself, or the way I stared at the ceiling some nights wondering if I was imagining it all. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was too dramatic. Maybe Jason didn't mean it when he shoved Dad into the wall. Maybe I'd twisted the memory. But then I saw the police photos from the other victims. I read the statements, word for word, describing the same behavior, the same manipulation, different cities, different women, same pattern. And suddenly, I wasn't dramatic. I was just the only one who refused to pretend anymore. The night before I testified, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, every excuse they ever made for him, every time they looked through me instead of at me. My hand trembled as I reheated old coffee, still wearing the same sweatshirt from the afternoon before. That's when I got the email. It was from the prosecutor's office. Attached was a short video, a deposition from another woman. I clicked play. Her voice cracked as she described what Jason had done to her, how he isolated her, how he laughed when she cried, how he said she was just like his sister, emotional, dramatic, weak. I paused the video. My chest tightened. There it was, my name, my identity, used as an insult. I wasn't even in the room, and still, he dragged me in. That's when I broke. I slid to the floor and let the tears fall, not from fear, but from years of being unheard. I wasn't making this up. He'd been doing it for years, and no one in my family cared enough to stop him. I thought about Mom's voice. "He's got a good heart," and Dad's shrug. "Boys get angry. That doesn't make him evil." I thought about the time Jason yelled at me during Christmas dinner, called me jealous, accused me of sabotaging his relationships. No one said a word. They just passed the mashed potatoes. But now? Now I had the truth. I wasn't the only one. And tomorrow, that courtroom would hear what they refused to listen to for years. I didn't want revenge. I wanted release. I wanted to look into Jason's eyes and say, "You don't get to define me anymore." The courtroom was cold, too bright, and smelled faintly of bleach. Jason sat at the defendant's table in a crisp navy suit, smirking like he was untouchable. Mom and Dad were behind him, shoulders squared, hands folded, loyal as ever. When I took the stand, Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad did, but only for a second, and with that same disappointed look he gave me when I turned down a babysitting gig to study for finals. The prosecutor asked me questions gently. I answered clearly, but when it came time for the defense to cross-examine me, Jason's attorney leaned in. "Miss Carter, would you describe yourself as emotionally sensitive?" I blinked. I described myself as human. He smirked. "Have you ever been diagnosed with anxiety?" "Yes," I said. "After years of being gaslit by people who called that weakness?" He paused, just for a second. Then he turned toward the jury, smiling, condescending. That's when I saw it. The same tactic Jason always used. Minimize, twist, distract. But I didn't flinch. Because I wasn't on trial. He was. After I stepped down from the witness stand, I didn't return to the gallery. I couldn't. I walked straight to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. My knees were shaking. Not from shame, but from finally telling the truth out loud. I didn't cry. I just sat there, letting the silence hold me. When I emerged 10 minutes later, I bumped into someone I didn't expect, the court reporter. A woman in her 50s, warm eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You did good," she said softly. "That took courage." I nodded, barely able to speak, because she was the first person that day who saw me, not as Jason's sister, not as the family's disappointment. Just me. I went home alone. Jason's defense continued over the next few days, and I stayed away. But on the final morning, the judge requested all witnesses be present for closing remarks, so I showed up. Wearing the same gray blazer I wore to my college scholarship interview, the one they never celebrated. The courtroom buzzed as Jason's lawyer gave his final argument. "He's not a monster," he said. "He's a young man who made mistakes, who loved too hard, who trusted the wrong people." I nearly laughed. Loved too hard? Tell that to the women with bruises and hospital bills. Tell that to the shattered doorframe from our parents' kitchen. Then the prosecutor stood. She didn't shout. She didn't dramatize. She just read their names. Every woman who'd filed a statement. Every person he intimidated. Every witness whose story matched mine. The courtroom went still. Even Mom looked shaken. But the breaking point came moments later, when the judge turned to Jason and asked, "Is there anything you wish to say before sentencing?" Jason stood, slow and smooth, with that same smirk he wore at 16 when he stole my laptop and blamed the neighbors. "I think some people in this room need therapy," he said, "and some of us just need thicker skin." That was it. That was his defense. Gaslight them, mock them, minimize. I turned to my parents. Mom was biting her lip. Dad looked pale. But they said nothing. Even then, even when Jason made a mockery of justice, they stayed seated, tight-lipped and loyal. So I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene, but I said, loud enough for the bench to hear, "I'm done being your scapegoat." The judge looked up sharply, but she didn't scold me. Instead, she nodded, once, as if to say, "It's about time." The sentencing didn't happen right away. The judge recessed for the afternoon. Jason was led out of the room in cuffs, but with that same smug look, like he thought this was all for show. I didn't go home. Instead, I sat on the courthouse steps for almost an hour, just watching people go by. Thinking. Not just about the case, but everything before it. Every moment I'd been called too sensitive, too much, or hard to love. How those words had slowly shaped me into someone who second-guessed her every instinct, someone who apologized for taking up space, someone who needed proof to believe her own memory. But that version of me, she was gone. Jason was facing sentencing for multiple charges: misdemeanor battery, witness intimidation, and violating a protective order. But for me, the real verdict wasn't about him. It was about what I would do with the truth, and I already knew. 3 days later, I walked into my parents' house, not to reconcile, but to return the spare key they'd long forgotten I had. They were in the kitchen. Mom froze mid-stir. Dad stood with his arms crossed. "We heard what happened," Dad said. "You happy now?" I placed the key gently on the counter. "No, but I'm free." They didn't understand. Of course they didn't. They still thought loyalty meant silence. That family meant swallowing pain to protect a brother who wouldn't even say thank you. "I didn't do this to hurt you," I said quietly. "But I'm done pretending I'm the problem." Mom stepped forward. "He's still your brother," I nodded, "and I'm still your daughter." Then I walked out. Not a slam, not a fight. Just a final exit. 2 weeks passed. Then I got the call. Jason's sentencing had been finalized. The judge had heard testimony not just from me, but from 5 other women. She wasn't lenient. He was ordered to serve a 14-month sentence and attend mandatory counseling for anger management and assault prevention. But that wasn't what shook the room. It was what the judge said before she read the sentence. "You spent years accusing your victims of being dramatic, but their stories aligned across state lines, across time. And the only person in this courtroom still calling them liars is you." Silence. No objections. Even Jason blinked, lips pressed tight, and in the gallery, I felt the shift. It wasn't vindication. It was something deeper. Truth, finally said out loud, by someone with power. And everyone turned. After the sentencing, everything moved fast. Jason was taken into custody that same afternoon. No goodbye hugs, no last speeches. Just metal doors and a clock reset on the life he thought he controlled. I didn't attend the sentencing celebration my cousin organized. I wasn't in the mood to celebrate someone else's downfall. Instead, I went to work. Back to the small nonprofit I'd been building quietly for a year, an advocacy group for women silenced in their own homes. No media fanfare, no press release, just action. One woman at a time. We offered free legal consultations, trauma therapy referrals, and housing resources. I didn't plaster Jason's name on the website. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about giving women like me a place to be believed before they had to walk into court with their hands shaking. 3 months later, I got a letter. It was from Mom, written in her tidy, looping cursive. I still don't understand why you couldn't handle this privately. You've always had such a dramatic way of blowing things out of proportion. But the judge's words stuck with me. I'm not saying I agree with you, but I am sorry we made you feel so alone. She ended it with, "Love, Mom, always." I read it once, then folded it carefully and slid it into a drawer, not because it made things better, but because it was the first time I saw cracks in her certainty. Small ones, but enough. By the end of that year, our nonprofit received a grant from a local women's foundation. We moved into a real office, nothing flashy, just clean white walls, quiet strength, and a door women could walk through without shame. At the ribbon cutting, the mayor spoke briefly, then handed the microphone to me. "I don't usually do speeches," I said, "but if you've ever been called too emotional or too much or too dramatic, I want you to know something." I paused. The room was silent. "You weren't. You never were." It's strange how quiet healing can be. There's no confetti, no grand moment when everything feels fixed. Just little shifts, morning coffees without anxiety, walking into rooms without scanning for judgment, trusting your own voice again. I didn't cut my parents off completely, but I stopped reaching. I let silence do what explanations never could. When they called, I didn't ignore them, but I didn't fold either. No more defending myself. No more begging to be understood. If they wanted to be part of my life, they'd have to meet me where I stood now, not where I used to shrink. Jason never apologized, but that no longer kept me up at night. He was a closed chapter, and I wasn't the footnote anymore. Last month, a girl came into our office, barely 22, eyes heavy with fear. She sat in the same chair I once did in a therapist's waiting room, back when I thought I was the problem. "I feel crazy," she whispered. I smiled gently. "You're not," she cried, and for the first time I saw it so clearly. This was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming my narrative and making space for others to do the same. So yes, they called me dramatic, too intense, too emotional. But the judge spoke, and the world turned, not toward him, toward the truth, toward me. Have you ever had to walk away from people you once called family? But the jelly. Drop your story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power. Send this to someone who needs to know they're not alone.